Today I'm going to show you how to make some maps using Flourish Studio. So let's go ahead and get started. To do this, we're going to make a couple kinds of maps. We're going to make a point map, we're going to make a choropleth map, and then we'll make a combination of the two. And we're going to use some data from the Washington Post's Fatal Force project, which looks at police killings throughout the US. And I've already sort of sliced and diced the data for our purposes. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm in my Flourish dashboard here. I'm going to click on New Visualization. And I'm going to scroll down. And the first thing I want to do is I'm going to create a map that looks at police killings in Maryland. And so this is the Fatal Force data that I've sort of filtered so it just shows killings in Maryland. And the data set that I'm working with goes from 2015 to 2021. So that's what we're looking at. We've got about, let's see how many cells we have here. So we've got 96 rows, and so we're going to map 96 dots on our map of Maryland. Okay, so the first thing I want to choose from Flourish is I'll choose US counties. And that's going to give us a base map that shows all of the United States broken up by county. And you can see, the way Flourish works is it gives you a base map with a bunch of work already done, so you can sort of see how they've set things up. And so this is our preview screen. And if we click over to data, we notice a few things, right? We've got some tabs up here, and then we've got some options that are selected over here. So, there's two tabs for regions, which work together to show your regions, our choropleth. We've got a points tab here, which shows the data that we need to create our points, right, which is basically Latin long data. And there's a lines tab, which isn't in use in this template, and we're not going to learn today. So the points tab is probably the easiest one to understand, because all it does is it takes a latitude and a longitude and plots a point at that Latin long. And we can see over here we've mapped our data, right? So we're telling it that the latitude is in column D, and in C, and the longitude is in column D, and the name that we want is in column A, and we can also add in we could map some other columns if we wanted to encode our data by color or by size. So that's how Flourish works. This regions geometry tab we're not really going to touch. This is sort of the underlying data for the map. And this regions category, this regions tab here, is where we have the data that we're going to map on top of our geometry. And we do the same thing. We sort of map different things. So the first thing we're going to do right now is we're just going to get rid of all this points data, because we're going to add in our own points data in a couple minutes. But the next thing we need to do, we have this great map of the US, but that's not really what I want. What I want is just a map of Maryland. So Flourish is going to make us work a little bit to get there. So I'm going to need to work in both this regions and regions geometry tabs. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to state name, and I'm just going to sort that column, and then I'll just go find Maryland. So let's scroll down till we find Maryland here. Okay, there we go. And I'm just going to grab these rows that have the geometry for Maryland, and I'm just going to cut those out. Now I'm going to select all of the rows in my data except for my header row here. And I'm just going to delete them. And then I'm going to paste that Maryland data back in. Okay? So now I've just got Maryland data. And I'm going to go over and do the same thing in this regions tab here. I'll sort state name. I'll find Maryland. There it is. I'll grab these rows, cut those, delete everything except my header row, and then paste in the Maryland data. Okay, and if we've done this right, when we go back to preview, we'll see Maryland over here, but it's kind of small. So what we want to do to fix that is we're going to change our projection from Albers USA. We're going to select the one right above it at the very top, Albers 30 and 45. And then we will click Bounds Auto. And now we've got our map of Maryland broken up into counties. So, this making a county map of an individual state is actually a little easier in Data Wrapper because Data Wrapper has all the states and the counties already there for you to just grab, and you don't have to go through this extra step. So in some ways, this particular task might be easier in Data Wrapper, but Flourish is much more customizable and has a bunch of other interesting stuff you can do. So sometimes it's worth jumping through that extra step. Okay, so now, this is kind of our base map that we're going to use. We've just got Maryland broken up by county, just a nice base map of Maryland. And now I'm going to lay my points on top of this. First, I'm going to go, so you can see down over here, there's all kinds of options for us. And it's important to keep in mind sort of the difference between your layers. We've got our regions layer, our points layer. We're going to be working right now in our regions layer because I want to change some stuff about this. All I really want to change is I want to sort of make it so that that's not selectable. So let's see what we want to do with that. So show labels, include all geometry. So we could totally disable that layer, which is not what we want to do. We've also got pop-ups and panels here, right? So we have pop-ups for our regions and also for our points, and we'll go ahead and play with that in a couple minutes. So what we're seeing here is pop-ups for our regions, and we basically just want to turn those off. So instead of having pop-up for the region, we want to click none. And now we've turned this basically just into like a base map. Okay, so we're basically done for that. For now, we could change the color, to whatever we wanted. If we wanted to make it gray or some other background color. For our purposes, this nice neutral is completely fine. So I think I'll just keep it with that, just to keep things simple. Okay, so we went through all that just to make our base map. And now we're actually going to add in our points data, which is just, like I said, I took the fatal force data and I just filtered it for Maryland. So, we can just grab all of this. It's a nice thing about Flourish is it doesn't mind if you just throw a lot of data in there because then it lets you map what you're actually going to use. So just remember, I'm pasting this in the points tab here. And now I just map the data that I want to use over here on the right. So the name is C, that's right, that's the person's name. And the really important thing here is to map your lat and your long. So my longitude is P, and my latitude is Q. And we'll come back to some of this other stuff in a second. I'm going to go ahead and delete size by for the moment. And if we go to preview, you'll see what it's done is it's put a dot for every location on our map. And that's what we wanted. That's great. We can do a few other things here too, which we'll go ahead and do just so you know how to do them. So we can encode our data both by color and by size. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Why don't we encode, we could encode color, we could do it by race, or we could do it by gender. The problem with doing it by race right now is it's just going to display the B, W, A, etc. from this column. So if we were going to encode by race, we want to work the data a little bit, and in Sheets or some other program we'd want to change all the B's to say black and all the W's to say white, just as a sort of a user friendly thing. So why don't we go ahead and color by gender, because it's pretty clear what M and F means for gender. We won't have to change those. So we'll color by column H. And why don't we size by age, just because it's a number that we've got. And I would say, like, I probably wouldn't size by age if I was going to publish this somewhere. It's not super useful to size that way, but it'll at least give us sort of an idea of how you do that. So now if we go back, we can see our circles are colored and they're sized by those two pieces of data. So let's take a look at our points layer. So, what it's doing for colors, it's pulling the first two colors out of this palette, and they're a little too similar right now to get really any data out of them. So, we could choose like we could choose this one, which is purely the blue and the yellow, and that's a little clearer. We could also override them. We could edit the color palette and start moving colors around if we wanted. So there's all kinds of ways to sort of change the colors that Flourish is giving you there. Okay, so that's fine for that. So if we're in the points layer, we can also change the maximum radius. We wanted to make some of these a little smaller just to make it easier for people to click on them, and I think we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, so let's play with our legend up here a little bit, and there's a place to play with legend here. Now, first thing is I want to get rid of this legend that's showing the points. So show point color legend I want to keep. Show point size legend I want to get rid of that. Okay, so now let's go up to point color legend, and I want to do a custom title. So I'll make it say gender of victim. Okay, great. So now we've got a nice little legend. All right, so let's see what else we want to do here. Now we can add some pop-ups that will really help our users sort of explore this a little bit. Flourish is going to try to make a pop-up for you, but you could usually do a better job if you go in and play with it a little bit. So let's go to our pop-ups and panels. And if we go to, okay, pop-ups for points, and right now it's automatically creating the pop-up for us, but why don't we go ahead and make a custom pop-up? And if we click on this little paintbrush button, it's going to pull up this nice little interface where we can, so this is the header. It's going to show us all of our fields that we're bringing in to our map so far right there. So we can just go ahead and click name, and now it's going to show us, I have to click over here, okay. Okay, so it's showing us the name of the victim right there. So, you'll notice it's only bringing in the columns of data that we've mapped at this point, right? And so that's good. So maybe I want to bring in, okay, so I could bring in the name, the age, and the gender of that person, and that's useful, but I can actually make a better pop-up if I bring in a little bit more data. And that's what this metadata for pop-ups thing right here is for. So let's say I wanted to bring in, let's bring in date, which is column D, and we'll bring in manner of death, which is E, and we'll bring in city, which is J, and state, which is K. Okay, and now I'm going to be able to make a much better pop-up, right? So I can say, I really like to write these in kind of plain English, so the person's name was, we can say manner of death, right? So here we have, right, Edward Donald Bright was shot and tasered, say, by police on date in city, comma, state. Right, so Leonard John Popo was shot by police on March 18th, 2021 in Pasadena, Maryland. Okay, that's a nice pop-up. And I think we're pretty much done here. This is a nice map. What we want to do now is we want to go ahead and add in some text, right? We want to add in a headline and chatter and source. So let's go ahead and do that. So we'll call the headline, we'll give the headline "Killed by Police in Maryland." I think we'll go ahead and give this one a subtitle that just defines the dates a little bit, right? We're looking at 2015 to 2020. And actually it was 2021. And we want to say, Baltimore City saw 26 people killed by police between 2015 and 2021, by far the most of any locality in Maryland, right? So we can kind of see by the map that a lot of these are concentrated in Baltimore City and also PG County down here. And we want to give a source for our data, which in this case we put under footer, and source name, delete source URL. Okay. Okay. The Washington Post, U.S. Census. Okay. Got it. All right. Sorry, I'm kind of having a problem. All right, let's just delete everything and start over there. Source name. Oh, I see. I've added it several places. Okay. Excuse me. All right. So let's have it say. So I see I've got multiple sources on. Okay. So source, the Washington Post, U.S. Census Bureau's cartographic boundary shapefiles, 2018 edition. So that's where, right, the Washington Post is where we got the shooting data, and the shapefile data has come from the census. Okay, great. There's our map. And, you know, we could go ahead and name this shot in Maryland or whatever you'd want to name it. And we could go over up here and we could publish it. And we could get our embeds and our links and all that great stuff. Okay, now let's make a choropleth map. And for this one, let's look at data for the whole US. And we'll actually be able to skip a step that we did earlier. So here we have the number of people that were shot by police in each state between 2015 and 2020. And I've got the count here, right? The raw number of people. But I want to normalize that so it's per 1,000 people. So I grabbed the population of each state and then I normalized it in this field right here, just with the function. I did it here in this sheet here, but I had to do a little bit more work because I needed the full name of the state. Anyway, this is the data that we're going to work with, and we're going to go ahead and make a choropleth map. So let's go create a new visualization, and this time we're going to grab U.S. states because we just want a map with all the U.S. states. So this works really similarly, right? We've got our tabs, we've got our mapping over here. So the first thing I want to do here is I'm just going to delete all the points because I'm just going to make a choropleth map here. So this is actually exactly what I need. And the way this is already all set up for me, but they're mapping by population, which is not what I need to do. So let's look at my data here, and let's go ahead and just grab all of this, and I'll just paste that right in here. Yep, go ahead and paste it. And the reason I go ahead and paste in the state name is so that I can double check that my states are lined up correctly. I'll just do a bunch of spot checks here to make sure things came across correctly. Yep, looking good, wonderful. I don't have Puerto Rico data. Okay, now I can clean this up and start deleting out some columns that I don't need. And I don't have to do this, but it just, makes things a little cleaner, which I'm always in favor of. Okay, so I actually don't need any of these. Okay, so this is what I've got, right? I've got the name of my state and the number of people that were killed by police per 1,000 people. And that's really all I need. So for my name, that is column C, and I'm going to color it by column D, right? That's what I'm going to use for the colors for my choropleth. And that's it. We sort of made this map already, right? We've got each state, and we've colored it by the number of people per 1,000 that were killed by police between 2015 and 2020. Great, that's super easy, nice map. We can go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So let's look at our regions layer, right? Maybe instead of the blues, we want to go ahead and make it red. That's a little nicer. We can also add a title to our label. I'm sorry, add a label to our legend, rather. So, okay, let's custom title. So, number of people killed per 1,000. That is the wrong place. Okay, so you can see I'm working under the point area there, but I want to be under region. So title, custom. There we go. Okay, the other thing I want to clean up here is I want to clean up my pop-ups and make them a little bit more interesting. So let's go to our pop-ups. And I want to do, okay, I want to be under regions. And I want to do custom stuff here. So let's go ahead and for the header, let's just have it be the name. Okay, so that's the name of the state. And now for the main content, we're going to need to bring in, oh no, I think that's all the data we have. So so let's just say, so that's going to just give us a number, right? Okay. So let's say per 1,000 people were killed by police in state name between 2015 and 2020. Okay, great. All right, that's very nice. Now let's go back and add a little bit of text to this. So we'll go under header and we'll add in, do a little storytelling here, right? New Mexico and Alaska, right? New Mexico and Alaska saw the most killings by police per capita. Subhead 2015 to 2020. Just help people understand a little bit what data we're looking at. And for our chatter, we'll say, according to data collected by the Washington Post, New Mexico and Alaska both had 0.06 per 1,000 people killed by police between 2015 and 2020. New York and Rhode Island had the least number of people killed by police in this time period, with 0.01 and 0.03 respectively. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and add in our source. I think we'll be good to go on this one. Okay. Great. So what I'd like to do now, and this is where Flourish really shines, is we can have a choropleth map and a dot map together. So we can actually add some dots. And we might as well use this map that we've already got working here. So we can add some points on top of it and actually increase the amount of information that we're giving people. So I've got a sheet in here somewhere, okay, called High Profile, where basically I've just grabbed like 10 or 11 high profile police shootings, and we're going to add them in as points. So let's go ahead and grab those. And remember, all we need to add points is lat long data, which is in here, right? There we go, P and Q. Okay, so we can use this same map, and under data, we can go to our points layer, and I'll just paste in this data from my spreadsheet. And now I just need to map some of it, right? So for the name, I'm going to bring in the name of the person, which is C. And you can see, maybe you saw there in that little jitter, Flourish is trying to guess. And it does an okay job of trying to guess. It got the name right. It did not get my latitude and longitude right. So latitude is Q, but longitude is P. And size by, I'm actually not going to size these by anything. We're already giving people a lot of information in this map, so we're going to try to keep this pretty clean. All right, so let's go ahead and play with our points layer a little bit. So first of all, it's giving this like spike as the symbol, but I think we'll just use a circle. And I think we'll make the circles a little bit bigger. And maybe we can give them a little stroke here. See how that looks if we do that. Yeah, what I'm trying to do is show that like there's two here because they're sort of stacked on top of each other. All right, that's fine. And yeah, I think the only other thing we really need to do is just play with these pop-ups a little bit on these points. So let's go down to our pop-ups and panels. And now we'll modify the information under pop-up and panels for points. And I will do custom. And we're just going to go through the same thing we did before, right? I'm going to try to make better pop-ups. So I will put in the person's name that was killed. And then for the content of the pop-up, right? So we've got their name. And now I want to bring in some more data for me to use from here. So let's bring in the date. So under meta for pop-ups, I want to bring in the date. I want to bring in the manner of death. We'll basically do the same thing we did in the other point map. I'll bring in the city and the state. Okay. And so now I can say person's name was manner of death by police on date in city, comma, state. So here we go. Philando Castillo was shot by police on July 6, 2016 in Falcon Heights, Minnesota. Jeremy McDowell was shot by police on September 23rd, 2015 in Wilmington, Delaware. All right, so the last thing I'd like to add here is I would like to add just a little bit of text, sort of help people understand what those dots mean. Okay, so go back and under header, so I'll just add this to the bottom of my chatter here. The dots on the map indicate the location of high-profile killings by police during this time frame. Great. And then I need to add to my source something new because I got this data from someplace different. So I'll just go to the end, put a period. High-profile killings data from the New York Times. Okay, so that's great. So we've made 3 maps fairly quickly in Flourish. And I really encourage you, as you're learning how to use Flourish and as you're learning how to use maps, to just go through these different windows, these different panels, sort of play around with the options and see what's possible. Flourish is great and really highly customizable, and it can be tough when you're first learning to really know what's available. So sometimes the best option is just to spend 15 or 20 minutes, playing with different options and seeing what's possible and learning what's there.